became interested in art at an age I practically don't remember because my mother was a hobbyist and she had a magic wooden box up in the top of a closet in our humble little home in the mill towns up by Crater Lake National Park that once a year would come down out of this closet, and my brother and I knew that that was a time to behave and to not interrupt her because she would just, freak out. And the smells of the oil, the old school oils when it was all real linseed oil and gum turpentine and all that stuff. And she would work very passionately for sometimes maybe as long as a week, and then would get very frustrated with what she was doing and she'd put everything back away. But it kind of instilled that it was something precious, that it was something to be valued. And she did that around music and literature and other things as well. And so it instilled an interest in all of the arts that then blossomed when I became a teenager and was fortunate to meet artists that just kind of bumped through our area and took me under their wing. I started painting and became inspired to paint really as a form of, I'm not sure how to communicate this without it sounding a little melodramatic, but it was a rough teenage childhood, a lot of family issues, a lot of things going on. It became an escape. So because I knew a little bit about art because my mother had played, and at that time in the public school system, we had a pretty good budget for the arts that was coming from timber monies from the sales of the forests up in Oregon that were being logged. And so that money was used in the band programs and the different things. So we were given art supplies and encouraged to work with it. And it was something that I found I could escape into. It was a form of escaping into this place of fascination and interest. And then praise, I think that's so important for people to remember that little bit of encouragement, to be that awkward early teens kid that somebody is praising what you're doing, really encourages you to think maybe there is something that you can do and that you can do it well. And that's nice. I didn't know that at the time, but in retrospect, I think that became a big part of it. It was that one thing that I could do and do well. And then even at the end of my high school experience, which were a lot of crazy stories getting through it, I remember, I'll be brief about the principal calling me in to say, "Richard, you have the worst attendance of any student we have in this school. You're very bright. I know you know all this stuff. Pass your tests. We're going to pass you because you've already found your calling." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you're painting. You're showing, you're selling, you're already teaching in your teens." And he said, "You found your calling, and not everybody does that early." So he said, we have all banded together and agreed that we want to encourage you to do that, but just realize you still have to pass those tests before we'll let you out of this institution." So I did and moved on and have been doing it ever since. Well, again, I'm a landscape painter and I'm known as a landscape painter, but really how I came to the landscape is a little bit of a twofold story. That all that early work in my painting was really figurative and portrait work. I was fascinated with it and had no use for the landscape at that time. And the nice benefit of that is I really got a classical training from the people that were helping me and working with me and things. So it was very much like being in an old atelier in France and learning my craft from all the mediums and groups to everything involved. And a really wonderful woman, Margaret Stahl-Moyer, gave me a set of pastels. She was giving me critiques every week, and she said, "With what you're doing in oil, you should work in pastel." And she said, "Also, always remember to paint what you really love." And it's not that I don't love humanity and people and stuff, but I knew I didn't want to make my living doing commissions and trying to please other people by what I was painting. So I went back to my childhood roots and growing up in those hills and valleys and streams, and that was my little magic kingdom. I grew up on Prince Valiant comic strip and all that stuff, and so I would just go off on my own in those streams. I was the prince in my kingdom and the knight on search of the Holy Grail. And I still at times feel like that knight in search of the Holy Grail. That mysterious grail are these mysterious things that we end up painting. And there's nothing like the light. I know it's cliche. Every landscape artist talks about the light and the quality, but it really is a cathedral out there. Whether you want to make it spiritual or not, it's just this magnificent thing to be in presence of. And it quiets me. I can be a person that can get pretty wound up about things and animated and the mind's going 100 miles an hour, but I get outside especially by myself painting or with a couple friends. And I just slip into that beautiful, quiet place. And you hear the sounds, slows us down. All of our senses, see. Portraiture doesn't necessarily do that, but when you're outside, you can feel the wind. It can be a little cold or a little warm. Bugs can even be biting you and be irritating, which is part of the experience. The light's hitting you and the light's hitting the landscape. I mean, you're just taking, all of your senses are being stimulated by this. The sounds of the birds singing, or, you know, even passing cars, it's all part of it. So that part is very seductive, and so I've followed that journey now up to this point. I think the ability to learn to slow down and observe is again really something that all of us find our way of learning to do. And for me, it's more about visual fascination than anything else. And I've always been in my own learning curve. You know, I can read something, I'm quite capable of doing that and learning from it. And of course, tactile, doing it with our hands and making it happen is absolutely part of it. But I'm extremely sight. It's like, show me. You know, I can watch another artist that doesn't have a lot of verbal skills while they're painting. It's really, the norm is to be very quiet and lost in your own thought. And I don't so much need them to verbalize the process because I slow down and really watch what they're doing. And sometimes just even watching the hand. Just watch the hand. You know, watch even how the hand comes down to pick up or to mix up something off the palette, you know, and those gestures and those things. And that's led to the whole visual fascination of getting into the science, like the law of simultaneous contrast, to see this scale where you lay out something that's middle value and you place it up against black and white, and in one sense it's a highlight and in the other sense it's a shadow, you know, fascinates me. It's like, you know, almost being this savantish child that just can stare at it for hours and hours, as much as I can put my thumb up in front of somebody and close my eye just like kids do and watch my thumb move back and forth with the person, which of course we understand is stereo vision and creates that feeling of depth that we have and why we enjoy having two eyes that focus and put an image together. But how do we impart that then into our paintings? How do I use simultaneous contrast in my painting? And then the longer I would do that and get meditative about these things, you become more sensitive about your subject matter. It becomes less about getting it right. You know, we all start there. We have to. We have to figure it out and get it right and analyze it and understand it. But then the longer we do it, it becomes more poetic. It's like it goes from being the encyclopedic definition so that we can hold on to it and grasp it and feel we're in control, to letting go and letting it become more poetic and more of a gesture and more of a statement that then communicates on another level. For Rembrandt to be able to take a carcass of a beef that has been butchered and is hanging in a locker and paint it so masterfully with his use of light and brushwork and things that we see beyond the brutality of that being this animal to it being something beautiful, is what transcends into the sublime. So my whole mission in landscape painting is to find the beauty in the simplicity, the beauty in the mundane, and to find that transition to where things that people would never look at or they look at every day, you make them pause when they see your painting and glance back. It's that thing they saw every day, but they never stopped and saw it. But now in that painting, I stopped and saw it. Now I'm making them stop and see it. And that's the connection that gets me really excited in painting.